Russia's President Vladimir Putin has announced the arrival of the first nuclear warheads in Belarus and said that more would follow. Speaking at an economic forum in St. Petersburg on Friday, Putin said the move was meant as a deterrent to, quote, those who are thinking of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. But he remained unclear about his willingness to use them. Here's what Putin had to say in his own words.
The use of nuclear weapons is certainly theoretically possible. For Russia, this is possible if there is a threat to our territorial integrity, independence and sovereignty, the existence of the Russian state. Nuclear weapons are created in order to ensure our security in the broadest sense of the word, to ensure the existence of the Russian state. But we, firstly, do not have such a need, and secondly, the very fact of reasoning on this topic already reduces the possibility of lowering the threshold for the use of the weapons. We have more such weapons than NATO countries. They know that, and they keep on inducing us to begin talks on their reduction. No way.
Let's bring in DW Russia analyst Konstantin Egger for more. Konstantin, on Friday, Putin claimed Russia has stationed a first batch of tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. Is there evidence that this has actually happened?
Well, I suppose that it happens, and I think it is indeed the first batch. But also, a few days ago, Putin expanded on the topic and said that full deployment will only happen when all the facilities for storage are ready. That is an important qualification. That means that probably it will take quite some time, and probably it's just going to be this first batch, that it was designed as a PR exercise, as a threat, but no more than that. So we'll wait and see, but definitely something is deployed. Putin cannot be so foolish as to not know that it's being monitored by the US. But there is one important thing. These weapons are very tricky. The delivery systems, i.e. essentially missiles that are being used, are dual use. So you can arm them with both conventional and nuclear warheads. And this creates a confusion. You never know what is actually being deployed and what is being readied. So it is a bit of a trick.
Something else I'd like to get your thoughts on. We heard Putin there claiming that Russia has more tactical nuclear weapons than NATO. Is that the case?
Well, that's the rare case when Putin is actually telling the truth. Yes, Russia has about 2,000 of such weapons, and actually it is, according to different assessments, 10 times more than the US has. That is the edge that Russia has over NATO, and this is why Putin is threatening the use of such weapons over and over again.
Okay, stay with us, Konstantin. I'd first like to take a look now at a trip by a delegation of African leaders to Ukraine and Russia. They're set to meet with Putin today in an effort to convince him to negotiate peace. But the delegation did not have that much success on the first stop of their mission in Ukraine.
Paying their respects, African leaders visit Bucha, the site of alleged atrocities against Ukrainian civilians at the hands of Russian soldiers.
Life is universal, and we must protect lives, Ukrainian lives, Russian lives, global lives. That's important, so protect lives and focus on development.
The visiting leaders also inspected destroyed Russian military equipment on display in central Kyiv. A show of support, but South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stressed it was not unqualified support.
The first one is that we are here to listen both to President Zelenskyy, and tomorrow we'll be listening to President Putin. And we do so with deep respect for the people of Ukraine, which we have expressed to President Zelenskyy. We're going to also listen to President Putin with regard to how he sees the road to peace.
Ramaphosa also stressed the urgency of keeping grain and fertilizer flowing out of Ukraine as African countries struggle with price spikes and food insecurity in the wake of the Russian invasion. The delegation's visit was interrupted by repeated Russian airstrikes on the capital region, causing Zelenskyy to question why the African leaders were headed to St. Petersburg on Saturday. Russian strikes attest to the fact that Putin is not in control of his own army, because they are striking us with missiles now. Other nations have decided to visit the country that initiated the missile strike today. I'm not quite clear as to how logical this looks, but they are leaders of free countries. It's their choice. Zelenskyy has ruled out any peace talks while Russian forces are still in Ukraine.
So, Konstantin, as we heard, Putin is about to meet African leaders in St. Petersburg. What are we likely to see there?
Well, I like President Zelensky's irony. The African leaders were there to witness Russian airstrikes against Kyiv. Putin has showed what he thinks about their mission to Russia. If he's not really in control of his army, that's probably even worse. But if he is, then that is a very interesting and demonstrative gesture. Do come, do provide a backdrop for my attempts to cajole, to attract the global south. But frankly, I don't really care what you're going to propose because I'm going to continue the war. That's how I read Putin's message here. And alas, I don't think that President Ramaphosa and other African leaders that are on this trip really understand what they're getting into. I'm absolutely certain, though, Claire, that nothing will come out of this initiative as nothing came out of the Chinese initiative. Ukraine is not going to surrender its sovereignty and territorial integrity, and Putin still continues to think that he can basically grind on with Russia's demographic advantage in this war and finally wear down first Ukraine and then the West that supports it.
Okay, perhaps another point of interest here. It's rather unusual to see Putin now for 2 days in a row making public appearances. What do you think his intention might be in seeking this kind of public exposure at this point?
Well, indeed, first and foremost of all, this is a very important forum, which Russia continued to stage every year, all through the annexation of Crimea. I attended them in better days when you had presidents of major multinationals and leaders of Western world vying for Putin's attention. Now it is another platform and another task, basically attracting and convincing Asia, Africa, what is called now the global south, that Russia is in the right and Ukraine is in the wrong, that it's all the fault of the West. And this is how it is designed now. Just look at the audience. Another thing that is important is that Putin started showing in public a few days before, starting with his conversation with the so-called military or frontline. I think that someone in his team, probably Peskov, told him, you have to show yourself to the public because that provokes all sorts of unpleasant conversations and rumors. And I think that's what Putin is doing now.
Well, thank you very much. As always, that is DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert.